It's the 3 on PLAX TV.
Yes, indeed. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy PLAX, and I am back with another episode of the 3 on PLAX TV. And in this episode, I am talking about the 49th pick in the NBA Draft and the importance of that. Now, let me start this like this. On NBA 2K23, I made a small forward. His name is PLAX. I even did a couple YouTube videos about him. I'll probably do some more before 2024 comes out. 2K24 comes out. But I made a small forward. And I'd say he's like a Luka Jokic type. He's not like super athletic. He's got a little bounce, but not nothing crazy. He's not super fast or nothing like that. But, you know, he's a Swiss Army knife. He does a lot of different stuff. He rebounds. He passes the ball very well. He can shoot threes. He can take it to the cup. He can post up. He does a lot of stuff. He's 6'8", right? And then he's definitely a Luka Jokic type. I wasn't trying to make that. That's just what I ended up getting. I think he's just a 3-level scorer or something like that. But that's his play style when I use him and stuff like that, right? And because I made a small forward, I was like, okay, what teams need a small forward? And the first team that popped into my head was the Cavs, because they don't have one. They had all their other positions are great, right? They have Darius Garland at the 1. They have Spider, Donovan Mitchell at the 2. They have Evan Mobley at the 4, who's got a lot of potential. They got Jared Allen at the 5. Jared Allen used to be a Brooklyn Net. I love Jared Allen, right? And all 4 of those players are relatively young guys. 2 to 3 of them have superstar potential, and all 4 of them have all-star potential, and they're really good, right? Yes, in the playoffs this year, did they crumble? That they did. They did. That's just the bottom line of it. I don't know exactly what happened, but I will say they're a very young team. Like, I believe the person with the most playoff experience on that team is like Donovan Mitchell. And he's been in the playoffs, but he always gets knocked out in the first round when he was in Utah. And then, I think Ricky Rubio's on the bench, but how much playoff experience does Ricky Rubio have? Darius Garland is young. Jared Allen has been in the playoffs briefly with the Nets. Evan Mobley is a second-year guy. So, I kind of get, I guess, the jitters, and this is their first time together going to the playoffs. I understand. So I will give them a pass on the dud that they had this previous playoff. But a big missing piece that they have is a starting small forward that's at the same caliber as the other 4 guys. And with the 49th pick in the NBA draft, that is exactly what they got. They got a motherfucking steal in Emoni Bates. Now, bad news about Emoni Bates. I know some of you are like, well, if he's so good, why was he picked 49th? Like, if he was so good and had so much potential, he would have got picked sooner. Most of the time, yes, right? He was like a top 14. He was a lottery prospect in high school and in college. He was a lottery prospect. The reason he dropped so much is because he is another individual who got caught and charged in gun activity. I don't know the exact details, but I know that he had a gun. I don't think he hurt anybody or anything like that. I think he was going to. I think he had plans to, but I don't think he actually hurt anyone. But he is another player that got in trouble with gun activity. And I understand Brandon Miller, the second pick who went to the Hornets, had an issue. But I think Imani's issue was a little bit harsher and more violent than Brandon Miller, because all Brandon Miller did was give the weapon to a friend who ended up killing somebody, which is fucking crazy within itself, right? Because it goes into, did you know he was going to do that and all that other stuff, right? But I think Emoni Bates did something, I guess, worse than that with his gun. I don't think he hurt anybody or killed anybody, but I think he had the intent to, and that was the biggest problem. But with all of that and all that news coming out, it wasn't as big as Brandon Miller's news because I believe nobody like died or anything, but Emoni Bates plummeted in the draft stock after that when that information came out. And I even thought the way they were talking, again, I don't know the exact details, but the way they were talking and stuff like that, I thought he was going to go to jail. I was talking to my buddy Rohan because my buddy Rohan knows who Emoni Bates is. Most of our friends don't pay too much attention to the high school guys unless it's like a Zion, like a superstar, generational talent type guy like Wemby or LeBron or Zion or somebody like that. But most of the time they're not paying attention. I do, with women's basketball and men's basketball, just so I can see who's coming up, you guys know. I love basketball. That's just what it is. But Emoni Bates was projected to be at the very least a lottery pick, and that is the reason he plummeted. But taking away the stupidity of what he did, whatever exactly he did, if you know in the comments, drop down in the comments down below exactly what he did if you feel comfortable doing that. I just don't know the details off the top of my head. But taking away the stupidity of what he did and the position he put himself in, Emoni Bates is a fucking monster. Emoni Bates is that guy. He's legitimately him. He's like 6'10", something like that. He's basically a more aggressive, angrier Kevin Durant. And I know I throw that around a lot, but that's because a lot of guys, I think because of KD and watching him, I think a lot of guys are becoming and want to be Kevin Durant. Not saying that's what Emoni Bates is doing. I'm just saying you see a lot of guys with that play style now. The tall, lanky shooter should be at power forward, but playing shooting guard guys, right? And that's Emoni Bates to a T. And I would even argue he's a better defender than KD because he puts the effort in on the defensive end. By all accounts, he makes his teammates better. He forces you to be better because he's always going to give it his all. So he's going to force you to give it your all as well because he's not going to be the only one doing his job out there. And that's a Jordan mentality. And then sometimes that's a little scary. That's a Kobe mentality, a Jordan mentality, and that's a little scary. But I think the league needs that sometimes. Sometimes that's refreshing. Sometimes that's what you need to take that next step and win championships. And I think that's what Cleveland needs. Cleveland already needed a potentially all-star level small forward, I think, in the starting lineup to take them over the top. Because realistically, fast forward 3 years from now, this team is a cheat code to me. Because you have Darius Garland, you have Donovan Mitchell, you throw in Emoni Bates, who has potential to be a Kevin Durant-esque player. You throw in Evan Mobley, who has Tim Duncan-esque potential. And you have Jared Allen, who is an elite rim protector, a very good rebounder, and a rim runner. You have shooting. You have defense. You just got to throw in a competent bench with those guys, and in 3 years, they're dominating. I truly believe that if Emoni Bates could come into the league and play the way he was projected before he got in trouble, which I don't see a reason why he won't unless they just don't let him play. Which, again, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and all those guys were happy that he got drafted there. So I think they'll help him along the way, and I think the coaches know what they got from him. If he stays out of trouble and he plays the way he was projected to be, he was projected to be a star, basically, before he got in trouble. I think this team with a competent bench, don't got to be nothing too crazy, just throw some vets and some shooters on the bench, a couple bigs. I think they dominate. I think they got potential to three-peat. And yes, Did they drop a dud this year in the playoffs? Yes. But they're missing a piece. They had a few key injuries. And they're very young. Right? That's why I'm saying in 3 years, if they could keep this core together, which will be tough. But if you see what I'm seeing, they will find a way to keep this core together. These 5 guys. Throw some mid-level exception, vet minimum guys on the bench. I don't see this team losing too much unless they just underperform. But as projected, I think this team dominates for years. I think they win multiple championships if they could keep this core together. I saw some talks about trading Jared Allen and trading Mobley. And sometimes I'm one of those guys where I'm like, oh, get them out of here. They didn't play right? But I'm also one of those guys that feel like the league is too quick to just, get rid of them, you know? With certain guys. Like guys like Julius Randle get multiple chances. Guys like Rudy Gobert get multiple chances, right? To fuck up and be bums in pivotal moments. But then other guys, it's just like, oh, well, fuck them. And that could just be the teams that they play for. You know what I'm saying? Because the Knicks are an incompetent organization, so of course they'll keep going to the well with somebody that just hasn't been working. But in some organizations are probably like, we're not dealing with this like underperformance in the playoffs. You got to go. But I think Cleveland should just stay 10 toes. Now that they have Emoni Bates. And just try to build this team, have this team build chemistry together, talk to them, try to keep them together, pay them. I understand they're in Cleveland, but pay them what they want to be paid. You got Emoni Bates on a second rounder contract for at least 3 years. Donovan got like 3 years on his contract, and Darius got a few years on his. I think Evan and Jared do too. I think Jared might have 2. But you pay those guys, you keep them together, you put some cheap guys on the bench that could contribute and be veteran presence for the starting 5, and I think it get crazy in Cleveland. I think they win another championship, and I think that would be beautiful, winning a championship without Bron. I think that would be beautiful for the city of Cleveland, because then it's like, okay, we can do it. You know, the chosen one came back and he got us one, but we were able to do it on our own without the chosen one, without the GOAT, you know? But let me know in the comments down below what you think. Am I overhyping Emoni Bates? I don't think I am, because the way he was projected. I'm just going by that. Now, if the projections was wrong and he come into the league and he just a bum, then hey, that's different. But from what he was projected and how this team is constructed and the potential this team already has without adding him, I think it's scary hours in Cleveland, and I think people need to be on the lookout. It's a lot of young teams. I might do a video on that because Houston looks good and Orlando looks great. It's just Cleveland is in a better position because they're already in playoff contention. You know what I'm saying? Like Houston isn't, Orlando isn't. What's some other teams? Detroit isn't. Like all those teams are just garbage. I think Cleveland is in a better position because at least they're already in the playoffs. So they don't have to go through too many more growing pains until they can reach a championship, right? Where Orlando and Detroit and Houston have to fight just to get to the playoff point and playing playoff games and go through those growing pains of the playoff games. Then they get to the championship contender thing, right? Where Cleveland is already in the playoff growing pains, losing series that you probably should win, playing against better teams and losing. And their next step is like championship contention. So I think they're further ahead than some of the other teams. I may do a video on that. Maybe not this week, but next week. You guys, talking to you guys makes me think of my future videos, and I appreciate that. But without further ado, make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you ding that notification bell so you know every time I drop a video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of my theory on Cleveland and Emoni Bates and all that stuff. And most of all, YouTube, I love you guys. Peace.
It's the 3 on PLAXtv.
Yes, indeed.